Anish brings his knight out to f6. Always exciting to follow the games of these top GMs. There are always new ideas at work. Pawn to c4. Anish adjusts his knight, brings his pawn to e6, opening up the bishop here. And Nodirbek. Now, what will he play? Generally, they go knight to f3, knight c3. He wants to allow the Nimzo Indian defense. That is a good idea. Yes, bishop to b4. Pinning the knight. Knight to f3. And now pawn to d5 is one way to play here, bringing back the game into Ragozin territory. He does it. Pawn to d5. Ragozin is a very interesting opening because it's kind of very solid, and if white wants to take advantage of it and try to fight for an advantage, by the way, cd5, he has to take some risks here. ed5. And one of the things that black is always aiming for is to take some advantage of this pin by bringing the knight to e4. So bishop f4 played. By the way, bishop g5 is another line. Queen a4 is there, but bishop f4. And Anish jumps in with the knight to attack here. Now this move is not only about pinning here, but also about starting to push your kingside pawns. That's what makes it so interesting. And we as players generally don't want to touch our kingside pawns because that's where our king is going to go. First he brings his knight to c6. He's waiting for pawn to e3. Then he can push g5, because if you play directly g5, then the bishop can go back to d2 and white is doing well. So knight c6, knight d2 played by Nodirbek. And I think it's time to go g5. Yes. If you go, by the way, bishop g3, I'll simply take it. So that's the reason why he goes bishop e3. And Anish now takes on c3. By the way, Anish is some sort of an expert in this line because he has beaten Magnus Carlsen with it. Bishop a3, attacking the rook here. And that was in an online tournament. Rook b1. Now you can't take advantage with bishop f5 because the rook can come to b3 attacking the bishop. So the best move now is to push your pawn to f5. Yes, pawn to f5, threatening f4. If you go to the mega database, you will find this game against Magnus annotated by Anish. So I'm pretty sure Nodirbek has come well prepared, and you can see Anish trying to recollect. He goes bd6, and Magnus had played the move rook g1 here, anticipating the move f4. Knight f3, the more common move in the position, attacking the g5 pawn. f4 is forced. You can't play a move like g4, then knight d2, and suddenly all the dark squares are weak. So f4, he comes back, bishop c1, and castles. Anish thinks for 9 minutes and castles here. This is a bold move. But Anish realizes that while his king looks weak, the white pieces are not really playing. Rook b5 attacks the pawn on d5. He goes g4 even. Wow. Okay. It's getting super sharp now. Knight to h4. Now, I mean, you would love to keep your knight in the game, but knight h4 right now seems like the best square. Knight e7, defending the pawn with the idea of c6. This can get very dangerous for both sides. He plays e3, provoking the move, perhaps f3. First c6, hitting the rook. I guess you go back, rook b3. Rook b2 played. And one of the things that worries me about the position for white is the knight. You can see it cannot really go anywhere. It's kind of trapped here. He plays h3, and what could be more natural? You're trying to break this structure. A move like h5 weakens the position even further. So that's why Anish cannot really go for h5 easily. And I love this move, b5, because he's clamping down on the c4 square. No more c4 breaks in. So h takes g4 makes sense, but he goes queen d3, and that's wasting time. I believe hg, bishop g4, maybe bishop h3 at some point, or a4. So it's needed to break the structure, but queen d3, well, there's no real idea I find of this move. And rook f7 played by Anish, a good move. Maybe the idea was to attack h7 right after hg4, and with rook f7 Anish has defended it very well. King d1 played here, and you will notice that the evaluation has turned really in black's favor. It's not so simple to understand why, but it's clear that this knight is the main culprit. Rook b8, defending the pawn here, maybe trying to play a5 later. H takes g4, he takes it finally. And Anish chops off. Bishop takes g4. And bishop h3 by Nodirbek. Queen d7 feels like a nice move to bring the queen to g4. It takes on h3. If rook takes h3, then there is queen d7. And notice, if you're careless, then a move like knight takes f3 suddenly works. h7 is soft. The rook is overloaded. So Anish goes queen d7 first, hitting the rook. The rook comes back. Again, there's a threat of not maybe knight f3 because there's queen g4. But Anish anyway goes in queen g4. King c2. And now look at this. Anish plays bishop a3. And he's actually trading away these two bishops, because he realizes that in the resulting position, his knight would be much better than the white knight. And this is a great example of how, even though white's bishop wasn't doing anything, trading it was a good idea. So king c1. And now knight c8. The knight is coming from d6 to c4. Queen f1 played. And I think just bringing the knight in should be good. Knight d6. Maybe he wants to go queen h3. King g7 played. Well, if he plays queen h3, I guess you can simply play h5, and you don't give this square of g6. Again, a very good move by Anish, coming king g7. Queen d1, threatening knight g2, taking advantage of the spin. Anish is so sharp today, he's not falling for any of Nodirbek's tricks. Nodirbek is now like, okay, I can't just sit around letting the black knight come in like this. I'll get completely steamrolled. So let me go and break through now. Till black is a little bit uncoordinated. So takes the pawn. D5 played. And now queen g5 check is one. You can also play c5, by the way. Very interesting move. He goes check, and Anish is like, well, why not? I'm getting another pawn. King b1. And he takes. Queen takes d5. Nodirbek pushes c4. I mean, if queen takes d5, cd5, and rook d1, then I can simply go knight d6. And if you take here, then e3, and already the e pawn is rushing in. So c4 played, queen takes d1, rook takes d1. And now the best move is knight to b6. Finds it. Knight b6. Excellent move by Anish Giri. Now if c takes b5, I go knight a4, threatening. So let's say knight a4, and he finds it. Threatening takes, knight c3 check, and you lose the rook because of the pin. So he plays rook d4, attacking the knight and the pawn. And now if you play cb5, you will lose material because of rook a4. But knight c5 is the correct move, attacking the rook. Rook quickly moves to c3. And now rook b5 check. Let's count the number of pawns on the board. Black has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. White has 1, 2, 3. So black is 2 pawns up. And rook b7, a good move, threatening rook b2 check. He goes rook c4. And now the knight can finally maybe come into the game, but not really. King f6 played by Anish. And it's move 40 done. So that pressure is also gone. 30 extra minutes. Nodirbek in big trouble. King c3. While all of this looks great for black, somewhere I do feel that the e4 pawn is a bit weak. And there could be some chances that white can get. Anish goes rook b1. A very interesting move, because if takes, he has check and he wants to win the rook. But I love the move rook d2. And the point is, now the knight is hanging. If the knight moves e4 and c6, both are hanging. And he goes check. Well, the best move was rook 7 b5 here. But he goes check, rook c2 played. And all of a sudden, the position is getting really, really tough for black, because Anish has to take now on c2. He takes, king takes. And now once again, moving the knight doesn't make sense. So rook b5. Yes. And the point is a4, rook a5, king d2, idea king e3. And calmly playing this position. It's not easy for black to make progress. But instead he goes king c3, doesn't play a4. And this allows king e5. Again, a tough move to make, because you're allowing the knight to come into the game via g6. But it's the need of the moment. Now you're 2 pawns up. You don't need any more the domination of the knight. King e5, good move. The king now protects its own pawns. Knight g6 check. By the way, a4 now would not work. Rook a5, king b4. And now I have takes, king c5, takes. And a pawn is running down, e pawn is coming down, it's winning. So he goes knight g6, king d6. King comes up to d4. And now Anish calculates it through. In 3 minutes itself, he attacks f2. And this is excellent. And look at Nodirbek there. He's got a bit excited. He takes the knight. And has Anish blundered here? Has he made a mistake? Check. Beautiful move. Comes back. And now a very important move. Pawn to c5 check. Finds it. King comes back to c3. And now another important move. Pawn to e3. He finds it again. Pawn to e3. What a beautiful move. Because many would think take and e3 is winning. But here knight h4, knight f5, knight e3 saves the day somehow. So that's the reason why e3, rook h4 played. And now Anish goes for this very cool move. I think rook b1 he's what he's aiming for. And he finds it, because now e2, e1 is a threat. If fe3, f2, the pawn is unstoppable. It's just game over. Completely. I mean, apart from that one moment where Nodirbek had a chance, which was difficult to assess, where he was 2 pawns down and could still hold, Anish has played literally a flawless game. You can see him getting all excited there. He brings in a glass of water for himself. and Nodirbek resigns. Anish Giri scores a big win here, and it's nice to see both of them analyzing with each other. They were part of the same team in the Global Chess League, and I'm pretty sure they know each other very well. But Anish in this game showed not only great opening preparation, he also showed great prophylaxis, not letting the knight on h